I actually have absolutely nothing to say, which is interesting to me because on a day to day basis, I always have so much that I'm thinking and talking about. For example, in recent days, something I've been yapping to my loved ones about are my observations of the furry community, okay, particularly in VR chat. Just a couple nights ago, uh, I was on VR chat with Katie and Ben, and we were touring a couple different furry communities, and in the first one we entered, I came across two furries who were having a conversation. And upon me glancing in their direction, they almost immediately started calling me a nigger. And this escalated almost immediately um, because they immediately deemed us as trolls. And they were just, they were calling me a nigger over and over again, among other things. Uh, it was very telling, okay? The furry community is very on guard. They're so defensive to the point of being offensive, and they remind me of a lot of some individuals within the black community. They're so used to being ostracized, bullied, dehumanized by general society that anything or anyone they perceive as unfamiliar is immediately deemed a threat. So these furries, upon seeing three adorable little SD Gundam avatars, they, assumed that we were there to harm them just because we weren't one of them. We didn't have the persona avatar. We, of course, were not there to troll at all. I just wanted to find some people to talk to, you know. Um, but yeah, I was immediately berated, called a nigger over and over again. And speaking of niggers, what do you guys think of the charliekirk assassination? Um, yeah, I've seen a lot of different takes online. Some people are devastated. Some people are celebrating. Some people say he had it coming due to his positions on the Second Amendment and guns and gun violence in general. I believe that his takes on gun violence make his death that much more tragic. Because to me, it just shows how much a lot of our fellow countrymen are willing to inadvertently endorse their own demise. I'm sure most of you are familiar with, um, some of the things Charlie said, like there some innocent gun deaths are an unfortunate price to pay for the Second Amendment. Um, I wonder, did he ever imagine that he would be one of those deaths? Does he believe that he was that is worth it for his two children to now be without a father? It's very tragic. Take a look at this Kale. I don't know how to turn my I don't know how to flip my camera, so I'm just manually showing the selfie camera. If you guys can't see it, it's my fault. But if you can see it, you can see how delicious it looks. Not too soft, not too firm, tastes delicious, will satisfy all your sensory needs. Okay? But I digress. Another interesting interaction I had in the furry community um, a few nights before the one I was just referring to, the nigger furries. Not that they were niggers, but they were calling me a nigger. Uh, well, it started with a male in one of these furry communities approaching me, and he said something along the lines of, "What's up?" I responded in kind, or at least what I thought was in kind, with, "What's good, twin?" Big mistake. He was immediately viscerally triggered, okay? And everything devolved from there, and the interaction ended with me being dogpiled by other people with this guy who had nothing to do with the initial interaction. And the conversation devolved into that of me being berated for my weight because they could tell by my voice that I'm fat, and I am fat. I'm a big yeah. All right. Um, I've been at a lot of weights. I love my body at all of them. Um, but yeah, I'm fat. not obese, but I'm overweight. Not obese anymore. Never again. Uh, I was though. But yeah, I'll. Yeah, I'm a big girl, big woman, I should say. I'll, I I might show you all the end of this video or something. Um, but yeah, average woman. If you see me in public, I'm gonna be probably at least half a foot taller than you, and probably 50 pounds or more heavier than you. It is what it is. I'm a big gal. But yeah, they were deeply offended by the fact that I was a big gal, and yeah, they were very obsessed with my weight. I mean, they had no idea what my weight is. I don't either. But they assumed just because of the way I speak that I was fat. And I am fat, so anything I sound like sounds like fat, of course. But I assume it's because when I speak, especially into like in a presentation setting or into a microphone, it almost sounds like I'm out of breath, which I'm not. I actually have like too much breath. I don't know. It might be the autism, but I have this strange issue with breath control when speaking specifically, not when singing. Singing, I can be belting my heart out and dancing my ass off, and I'll have no such issues with my cadence as I do when I'm speaking. But I digress. They didn't like that I was fat. I even pointed them toward my YouTube channel so that they, could take a look at my build and confirm whether or not I'm fat. Even then, even seeing me, they couldn't really tell how fat I was or if I was fat, which I would say is a W. If you have a group of people who are trying to troll you and call you fat, if they're looking at you and can't definitively say you're fat, that, I'm not going to complain with the way I carry that fat then. You know what I'm saying? Not that I would either way. I love my body. That's why I'm, going to take care of it. That's why I'm going to lose some of this fat, cutting a bit. You know what I'm saying? But I digress. Racism and body shaming. I don't know if these are things that you'd expect to come from the furry community, but these are things you can very much experience. And I don't by any means believe that they make up the majority of the furry philosophy or mindset, right? But it is, I mean, anecdotally, of course, it is evident that my most negative VR chat interactions came from the furry community. And I don't believe this happens in a vacuum or because furries are inherently evil at all. I do believe they are a product of the toxicity that trolls and, other bad actors bring to them. And now the poison has spread and it has contaminated many of their minds, and I don't even know if they can see it anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, I truly believe those furries who were calling me a nigger, I truly believe they were trying to beat us to the punch in a sense. Because, of course, a lot of trolls who attack the furry community, they use simple methods like racism, homophobia, transphobia. They love slurs. And so I believe those furries were trying to kind of send the message that anything you can use won't hurt us, because clearly we're okay with it ourselves. We'll use these methods ourselves. I believe they're trying to beat us to the punch. Of course, we were never going to throw that punch. We had no intentions of doing anything like that. We simply are not trolls, okay? But because we are not one of them, they immediately deemed us as such. And I mean, we don't really have to wonder that the furry community's reaction to their unacceptance by society is obviously just going to breed more unacceptance, right? Of course, I'm not going to think any less of furries because of these negative interactions I had with a handful of them, if even a handful, right? But I could absolutely see how someone else could. If I told my mom I was swarmed by a couple of furries and called a nigger over and over, she'd be like, oh, these furry individuals sound rather unsavory. They're racist. And, she probably wouldn't fuck with them. Because that would be her first impression of them. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing. A lot of these instances are going to be someone's first impression of a furry. For example, Katie Town. She doesn't really know anything about furries. This was her first time ever in a furry world or even speaking to or around furries. And this was her first impression of them. Just them calling her best friend a nigger over and over again. That's not a good look. But of course, Katie Town is not an ignorant fuck. And so she didn't walk away from that thinking, oh, all furries are like this. But she did walk away thinking, just wondering like how they're not more empathetic to toxicity and bullying. You know, like they are, you know, well, kind of, you know, inflated stakes no jutsu, but like they're kind of, you know, marginalized group in a sense. uh and so it's like the way that they're willing to treat other people the way they've been treated just goes to show the level of ignorance, and it goes to show the level that this toxicity has just absolutely rotted their brains. It's unfortunate. um but yeah, furries, niggers, and kale. I don't really have much to talk about. I don't have shit to talk about. But yeah, my tablet's about to die. I don't have a cell phone, so I'm recording on my beloved Lenovo Tab M11. Um, and yeah, it's cool. Thanks for tuning in. Um, Star Park out for the most part.
Yappa da pompa da beans and the super, yappa da pompa da beans and the super, yappa da pompa da beans and the super, yappa da pompa da beans.